Hello YouTubers, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite car brands, Aston Martin. About 10 years ago, I purchased a 2005 Aston Martin DB9 with only 9,900 miles on the clock. And simply put, it was one of the best cars I've ever owned. In my opinion, Aston Martin doesn't receive enough credit for the amazing cars they build. So today, I'm going to do a video about my ownership experience with my DB9. And you just might be surprised how reliable and fun these cars can be. In this video, I'll be going over the buying experience, reliability, common problems, and ownership costs. In the year 2011, I had worked really hard, saved some money, and had a 30th birthday that was coming up. I knew for my 30th birthday I wanted to buy an exotic car, but didn't know which one. After months of research, I had the list of cars I wanted to buy down to two. A red 86 Porsche 911 Turbo, also known as a 930, and a blue 2005 Aston Martin DB9. In my opinion, the 930 is the most beautiful generation of the 911 Turbo that has ever been made. I slept and breathed 930s back in the late 90s and early 2000s, so it only made sense that a 930 would make my list. I was also equally as obsessed with the DB9. I thought Aston Martin did a phenomenal job with the car, and I was absolutely speechless when I saw my first DB9 in person. The question is, which one would I choose? This particular 930 that I was interested in was for sale at a Toyota dealer of all places and was priced for a mere $33,000. Yes, you heard that right, $33,000. And no, it wasn't a basket case. This was well before car dealers and flippers started treating these cars as investments. So this was a typical price on a nice 930 back then. This 930 had only done 40,000 miles and even had the desirable sports seats, which is a must for me. This car also came with a full service history. So why didn't I buy it? Well, the reason is my wife. She made a good argument that most of the nice cars I've owned so far have only been from one company, Porsche. And maybe I should try something else. Do I regret not buying a 930? Heck yeah, but that's only because prices have gotten so silly that I could have sold it and purchased two Aston Martins with the money. At the time when I was looking, the DB9 was significantly more expensive than a 930. Nice examples of early DB9s were changing hands between $70,000 and $80,000 depending on options. I started by looking for cars that were for sale by owner in the hopes of finding a better deal, and it did pay off. I found a nice 2005 Aston Martin DB9 with only 9,900 miles for sale in Indianapolis. The story I received from the seller was that he was graduating from college this year and moving back to China, and the car wasn't going back with him, so it had to be sold. The car had an excellent service history, but it did have some cosmetic flaws that were caused by an owner who should have been a bit more careful. I was hoping these flaws would allow me to get the car at a significant discount to market value because let's face it, parts for Aston Martins are anything but cheap. A few of these flaws I noticed were the motorized navigation screen wasn't working. There was a scratch on the bamboo door trim and the chrome wheels were peeling. After researching the flaws and finding how much it would take to make them right, I made the seller an offer and was surprised he accepted my first offer. My first offer would have probably been taken as a lowball, but I did that in the hopes that he would counter somewhere in the middle, but he didn't, so it worked out in my favor. So after paying the guy for my new-to-me 2005 Aston Martin DB9 with only 9,900 miles on it, it was now time for me to start the 4-hour trek back home. Immediately after purchasing the car, I started on getting the service up to date and repairing the flaws. The first thing I did was change all the fluids and filters in the car so I had a baseline to start from. If you are a DIYer, then you will find that doing regular maintenance on a DB9 is actually quite easy and enjoyable. Probably the biggest surprise for me during this ownership experience was the pricing of consumable parts. Wowzers! I had no idea oil filters, air filters, and steel brake rotors could cost so much. When I owned my DB9, there was absolutely zero aftermarket support, so that means every part I needed had to come from the dealer. And Aston Martin isn't in the business of giving discounts or cutting deals, no matter how many tears are rolling down your face. Maybe things have changed since I sold my car, but at the time of my ownership, the only place I could purchase oil filters, air filters, and brake rotors was from my friendly local steeler. To put these costs in perspective, an oil filter set me back $75. A set of air filters were over $200, and brake rotors were well over $1,400 each. Just keep in mind that even when you do DIY all of the service yourself, it can still lead to a very expensive repair bill, but it's still a heck of a lot cheaper than the dealer. For my 2005 DB9, Aston Martin recommends I change the oil every 12 months or 10,000 miles, whichever comes first. Aston Martin refers to this as the annual service.
The annual service.
Which is basically an oil change and a bunch of inspections. The nice thing about the DB9 is it didn't require some crazy expensive boutique oil, and instead only required Mobil 1 0W40, which is the approved oil for the DB9. This oil can be found at your local Walmart and various auto parts stores very easily. This made doing the annual service quite reasonable for me. So every year I would buy 2 5-quart jugs of Mobil 1 0W40 for 25 bucks each from Walmart, and then order a $75 oil filter from my local dealer, and then completed the service in my garage. All in, the annual service set me back a very reasonable $125 to do every year. However, if you have to rely on the dealer to perform this annual service, then bend over because you'll be paying around $1,400 bucks. But you do get really nice donuts and coffee if that helps. If you're one of those guys who can't work on their own cars, then I would highly recommend you find yourself a good independent garage where service costs should be about half of what they are at the dealer. Overall, my ownership experience was extremely good, and I didn't have any major issues with the car, but I did have a few problems. The first problem I had was with the navigation screen. For some reason, the motorized screen wasn't working. I could hear the motor running, but the screen wouldn't flip up anymore. I did some research on the subject and found out that Aston Martin had issued a TSP for this very problem. When Aston Martin was assembling the motorized navigation system at the factory, they had applied a grease which had a chemical reaction to the plastic gears, which in turn caused these gears to get brittle and disintegrate over time. Thankfully, Aston Martin had a new plastic gear set that I could swap in, and my motorized navigation screen was working flawlessly again. Swapping out the gears in the navigation unit was a bit time consuming, but overall was pretty simple to do. I think the most surprising part about this repair was the parts only cost $20. It was the first and last time I ever spent that little of money at the Aston Martin dealer. If you can't do this repair yourself, my local dealer said they could do the repair for $2,000. Ouch! The second problem I had was with the chrome wheels. The chrome finish on them was peeling pretty bad. I spoke to a few shops who specialize in wheel restoration, and they told me they could re-chrome them or powder coat them, but the new finish probably wouldn't last, so I opted to buy a new set of wheels. After weeks of looking at wheels, I decided to go with a set of wheels from Ace Alloy in sizes 19 by 8.5 in the front and 19 by 10 in the rear. The model wheel I went with is called their Mesh 7, finished in hyper silver with a machined face. The wheels I ordered are not a generic fit wheel that is meant to fit several different makes and models. These wheels were custom made with the correct offset so they could fit perfectly, just like the factory wheels. I then wrapped my new wheels in Bridgestone Potenza tires. I know wheels are a very subjective subject, but I thought these wheels really enhanced the look of the car. I was really impressed with them, and I was getting compliments on the car and wheels quite often. The third problem I had was with the stereo. It started working intermittently. My 2005 DB9 came with the optional 950 watt lens stereo, which was the top of the line system offered for the DB9 in 2005. The stereo sounded great and had some really advanced features. One of those features was a servo-controlled subwoofer that used an accelerometer to provide the correct feedback required for pitch accuracy down to the lowest frequencies. It was really a phenomenal sounding system, but the problem is the LIN amplifiers that were used in the car are complete garbage. A lot of the DB9 owners who had the optional 950 watt stereo were having problems with their amplifiers failing prematurely, and the only recourse for someone who was out of warranty was to buy a new one, direct from Aston, at a cost of almost $4,000. Looking back at the service records on my car revealed that the amplifier in my DB9 had already been replaced once under warranty, and I didn't want to go with an aftermarket system, so that left only two choices. I could either suck it up and spend the $4,000 on a new amplifier which would ultimately fail again, or send my amplifier off to someone who could repair it. I decided on the latter, which only set me back $500. Unfortunately, the place I used to repair my amplifier is no longer in business, otherwise I would provide their contact information in the description below. Once I received my repaired amplifier back, I installed it and was back to having a working radio again for well under what Aston Martin wanted to charge me. The fourth and final problem I had with the car was with the transmission cooler lines. This problem started happening on the third year of my ownership at around 14,000 miles. I started noticing a very small amount of transmission fluid leaking on the ground every time I parked the car. I later found out that Aston Martin had spec'd the wrong rubber hoses which caused them to leak where they meet with the metal lines. Aston Martin does offer an update kit to rectify this problem on early DB9s, that is if you're willing to spend about $1,000 on it. I decided against buying the kit because all I needed to do was replace the rubber hoses and clamps and felt I could do it for much less than the solution that Aston Martin was offering. I ended up spending a total of $50 to fix my transmission cooler leak. I spent $35 on a new high pressure transmission hose and another $15 on some high quality stainless steel T-bolt clamps, and I was back to being leak free again. After I completed the repair, I followed the procedure in the shop manual to top off the transmission fluid. My car took just under 1 quart of ZF Lifeguard 6 fluid before it was full again. Now that the mechanicals were picture perfect and the car was running great, I now wanted to fix a few nagging cosmetic issues. When I bought the car, there was a scratch on the driver's side bamboo door trim that had been bugging me for some time. I found a place on the internet who specializes in restoring trim from classic cars, so I gave them a call. They told me they had restored a variety of trim pieces from Aston Martins, both new and old, so I decided to give them a shot. I removed the door panel and shipped in my scratched trim piece, hoping it would be returned back in as new condition. About 2 weeks later, I received my refinished trim piece, and I wasn't disappointed. They did a phenomenal job of repairing my door trim, and I couldn't have been happier with their work. The second cosmetic issue that had been nagging me was the side mirrors. They were peppered with rock chips, so I removed them and dropped them off at my local Aston Martin dealer to be resprayed. Not only did I have them resprayed, but I also had them apply a clear bra on them to protect them from getting future rock chips. Once I got them back, I installed them on the car and then basked in my accomplishments. After all that hard work, my DB9 is now perfect. Here are some of the last pictures I took before selling the car. So this is what my ownership experience was like after owning the car for 4 years and putting about 7,100 miles on the car. I sold the car in 2015 to a buyer from Florida who bought the car sight unseen and then had it shipped to him. Now that 6 years have passed, I'm absolutely shocked how cheap DB9s have gotten. In my opinion, a used DB9 is one of the best bangs for the buck right now. You can now purchase a car that was once $200,000 for as little as $35 grand. I'm definitely not advocating to go out and buy the cheapest DB9 you can find, but there definitely seems to be some phenomenal deals out there. If you are in the market for an early DB9, I would focus my attention on making sure the dipstick recall has been done, the transmission cooler lines have been replaced, or at least make sure to have them thoroughly inspected to ensure that they're not leaking, and I would stay away from the Lin 950 watt stereo option. As cool as that stereo is, it's only a matter of time before that amplifier breaks again. Overall, my ownership experience with the DB9 was great, and I missed the car dearly. I also love the attention to detail that Aston took both under the hood and in the interior. Every time I popped the hood, I would marvel at the beautifully finished metal pieces in the engine compartment. This is somewhat of a rarity today, since most high-end cars are littered with cheap plastic components that will become an absolute nightmare right around the time the warranty expires. Yes, German car manufacturers, I am talking about you, especially BMW and Porsche. I think every car guy should experience a V12 Aston at least once in their life. With ever-increasing emissions and fuel economy standards, it's only a matter of time before V12 cars will become extinct forever.